I'm stuck at work.
That's why I introduced.
We'll go ahead and get started. Tony, you are up first.
All right. Come on. Jake is getting us started, but you should have in front of you a file folder. And in that file folder, you'll see on the very first page, it's just a one-pager. Just to kind of remind folks and bring folks back up to speed. Special education 3 years ago, right at the beginning of COVID, put together a strategic planning process for special education. And as we did that, we had folks from all areas of special education. We had folks from InSource, which is an advocacy group for the state of Indiana for students with special needs. We had folks from Oaklawn and general ed administrators put together our strategic plan based on all of our data and information. And we started by going through every policy and worked out. So this is the third year of our plan, and those were the 6 goals that we had identified in looking at where we were at that point. The second page, the second group of things in your file folder really are the PowerPoint presentation we're about to go over. The third, and I'm looking at Ms. Mullins' packet, you'll see a position for RBTs that we do training for this summer. RBTs are registered behavior technicians, and they are folks that work with our students who are on the spectrum. And then lastly, or thirdly, is the Heart City Coffee Company. And I appreciate Mrs. Cox today bringing you each the Keurig version of the coffee that those students are now putting out. So Mr. Weaver has been asking about when we're heading towards the Keurig, and we are now there. So I believe Mrs. Cox got you all a sampler packet. She did, thumbs up. All right. The last time we met, we did not yet have our results-driven accountability. And as a refresher, results-driven accountability are special education scores given to every school district in the state specific to special education. And what these scores tell us, they're kind of like the ABC system for schools. And we get 2 scores. We get a determination score and a differential level of support score. Every year that we have done this, there has been some change in the state about how they're going to do this. And this is the first year that we now have things that are put out online in a version where we can pull data and look at individual data right online. This is our overall score. Meets requirements is the highest score you can get on the areas that we're required to fulfill reports to the state. Areas of indicators like, are we getting our timelines done for students who are in initial testing? Are our students in transition being taken care of? Do we run our budget the right way? It is everything that encompasses requirements by the state. And as a refresher, if we have 1 student out of 300 we test in a year on an initial that is not done on time, that is a failure. You have to be 100% accurate. So large school districts like ours rarely make that mark. This is the first year we've made that mark in a long time. So kudos. I'd like to make sure to give a hand to all the special educators and teachers who got that done. That was a major kudo for us. So that level, we're at the highest. The second level then on the differentiated level of support starts at 1, we're at 2. I feel like getting a B. What that really means is we've got some areas to continue to focus on. Then you see 100%. We got 100% in the determination score and a 51, and that's not percent, those are points, and 51 points in the differentiated level of support. What that really means for us as we sifted through the data, and we looked through the data in a pretty detailed fashion, there are some markers we're knocking it out of the park on. We get compared, and you see up in the upper right-hand corner, we only get compared to school districts that are 10,000 to 30,000. So when they're looking at our data, they're only comparing us to other schools the same size, which is a much fairer measure because we have lots of different kinds of things going on that, not to pick on a school like Warsaw, which has 7,000 students and is about half our size or less than half our size, or Fairfield or Wauwnee. They're just smaller districts, and so they don't have as many indicators as we do. So when we look at that, our score came out and put us in that second level. What that means is the state will allow us, if we want, to use their resources, but we are not required to use their resources to better our scores for next year. As we look through the data, some of the things that were very interesting is we scored at the highest level in students who are attending in general education course areas. Their goal statewide, we're about 85%, we're almost 90%. What we know by research and statistics is the more that students are actually educated with their general ed peers, the better their scores are because they're getting the same instruction. So one of the areas we really want to focus on is that core level of instruction. How are our special educators working together with our general educators in those areas, and how do we differentiate or change that instruction for those students after they've received or as they're initially getting that instruction? I think that will raise our score some. The scores for this are also a year behind, so this is the first year after we were not in COVID. So it's the first year that we had students who were on a graduation, because that's one of the other pieces. That score, if you remember right out of COVID, went down. And so our score went down in that area. I know what our scores next year are because, again, they're a year behind and they went back up. So it'll be very curious when we get our RDA scores next year because I anticipate our scores will go back up. So when we look then at the goals, I'm going to go back to that one pager and we're going to go through the goal pieces. Really looking at that suspension and the suspension rate, we rarely see expulsions for students because we have alternative services. So we really focus a lot more on suspensions. 3 years ago, we felt like, just like every other school in the country, our suspension rate of students with disabilities was higher than their general ed peers. And that is a common piece we don't want to be common. So since we met last time, there are a couple things up here we've done. There's been provided training to all teachers of record. Did I hop in on yours?
Okay.
I apologize. I'm getting so excited about this stuff.
He loves talking about
I do love talking about suspensions.
All right. I get to talk about suspensions. Isn't that exciting? So I'll jump in where Tony left off.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Great opening. So we provided training for all of our teachers of record at the freshman division during our last e-learning day, and they got training on writing quality behavior plans. What was exciting for us, it's the first time that we've been able to have all of our teachers of record in one location since before COVID. So it was nice to see all of their faces as a team and as a unit together for a training. So that was nice for us to see during that training. During that second half of that e-learning day, then we also provided training for our elementary teachers, not only on writing the behavior plans, but then on writing behavior goals to go along with those behavior plans. So our elementary teachers had 2 trainings on that day. In addition to those trainings, then our high school staff at the main high school campus, led by Mrs. Bonner, they are meeting weekly to review the suspension and the discipline data so that they're staying on top of the students that are having the most difficulty and that are struggling, and they're able to come up with plans to help make those students successful, and they're reviewing those students on a weekly basis. So we're really making a difference for our students at the high school. Tony, back to you for the last part.
So, as we mentioned last time, we're doing the school-wide evaluation tool for every school in the district that's K through 12. So when we look at that school-wide evaluation tool, that's a behavioral tool that tells us how well the behavioral intervention plan is being put in place, and those are being done as we speak. So how will that help special ed? It will help everybody. If we know what we're doing across the board, that tells us where our core behavioral interventions are occurring, and that's the focus. The SET stands for the school-wide evaluation tool, and again, that is a tool that's put out by the Office of Special Education Programming in the Federal Department of Ed. It's free to us, and it's done by somebody from the outside. So every one of the folks doing the SET are actually on the liaison from the central office to the building. So we meet with the building principal, and then there is a random interview of 10 staff members and a random interview of 15 students. And when I say random, it is random. I've so far interviewed a cafeteria worker. I interviewed a little kindergartner who was very, very sweet. So you kind of get who you get. And the good news is you can tell a lot because you get a lot of different people and different settings. And then that comes out with a score, and that helps us as we communicate back and forth with the school about areas they need to focus on. And that's good information for their PBIS or PRIDE teams then. All right. This one really is me. So on the second goal, we identified early on that when we were assessing English language learners, that we were under-identifying for special education students whose first language was not English. And that's a actually not common phenomenon. It's usually the reverse. We over-identify those students because what appears to be a language barrier, or what is a language barrier, appears to be a special education issue. And so when we started looking at that data, we were involved with Dr. Ortiz, who is out of St. John's University. He is the national and international, I'll use the word, he doesn't use this word, but I'll use this word, dude. I mean, he is the guy that you go to talk about this. He's a school psychologist by background, understands speech language, and he last year worked with our school psychs and our speech pathologists. This year, come up here at the end of this next month, he'll actually be meeting with all of our EL teachers for one day. And the reason we're having that conversation is because many of our English language teachers are the person that has the best or most common and consistent relationship when it comes to, is this a language barrier or is this something else going on? So if we train them, they're our first indicator, our first red light, as well as the general ed teacher who often sees these kinds of pieces. They can start to assess, this is a kid we need to get to the MTSS team because this is not a kid that we think that this is a language issue, we think this is a special ed issue. So then he will work with that group, and then the following 2 days, we'll be working with the speech pathologists and the psychologists. We are going through some of the additional ARP funds that the American Recovery money that was given specifically to special ed. We actually purchased the PVAT, which is a picture of a vocabulary assessment, so that it helps us identify, are the issues we're seeing more language-based, or are they really more special education-based? And so we purchased a district-wide, and strangely, you'll notice it's called the Ortiz PVAT. We actually did that work before we hired him, and I want to say that. He did not shamelessly try to sell us his stuff, and he has not done that. But again, he's the person who's nationally putting this stuff out. So we're pretty excited to go down that road. Before I forget, I saw Jessica walk in. Jessica is a member of our guiding coalition for the special education group. So as we go through this, I'm just sure her head is nodding yes all of the time. With this particular goal, it's important to know as we're looking at what goals over the next few months, April and May, we're going to spend time saying, okay, is this a goal we need to continue? This is a goal that I'm not sure we're going to need to continue. It's a goal that we're actually striking. It looks like our balance is getting much closer to equal, and we're pretty excited to talk about that goal, maybe still doing the work, but not having to have the profound focus that we've had in the past.
All right, so our next goal has to do with our specialized programming, servicing our very specialized, unique populations, both in emotional disabilities and intense intervention. So again, as Tony mentioned, when we look at our goals and seeing where our needs are and what we're going to need to continue, this is a goal that we have made immense progress over the last 3 years in developing our programming. So most likely this is also a goal that we will not necessarily intensely continue, although we are always going to pay special attention to these specialized unique programs just to meet the unique needs of our students. So as we look at our programming, one of the things that we were able to institute this year was having a release day or a quarterly staffing day for our intense interventions teachers to actually, during the work week, be able to connect with all of the other related service providers that help provide services for that student. So whether it be occupational therapy, speech language pathology, our physical therapist, giving opportunities for them once a quarter to actually get together, have a sub covering that classroom, because oftentimes our intense interventions classrooms do not get subs. So those teachers, because they're so committed to their students, don't want to take the days off or take that time away from being with their students, knowing that they are the ones who are often providing that care for their kids day in and day out. So by organizing this quarterly staffing, it allowed for us to kind of outline when they would all have that day, giving them each the opportunity and guaranteeing that we had class coverage to provide the services for their students while they were out. So we have now done that 3 times. The feedback is very, very positive, and we're going to continue that practice as we continue to move on through next year even. We mentioned we adopted the Touch Math curriculum in our intense interventions classrooms this school year. Touch Math is very systematic instruction, actually working with touch points on numbers and helping our students with significant cognitive disabilities really understand the number system and give them tools to fall back on, even when it comes to money, by using touch points, as opposed to just counting on their fingers. So they learn to recognize the numbers and then work on systems in order to do the cues in order to help them count even money independently. So we're continuing to move forward with the implementation and utilization of that. The other thing that we were able to purchase this year were AbleNet tools. And you'll see those a little bit more in a video at the end of our presentation. But we started with the AbleNet tools adoption at the secondary level. And what they are is they are tools to allow students who do not communicate in a typical manner a means of communication. So whether it be a push button or giving them other assistive technology to mobilize their iPads, right? So different ways for them to be able to interact that are really specialized to their needs. We have secured funding for next year to be able to implement that at our elementary classrooms as well as PACE. So we're excited about that. We are also using the tools and expertise of even our high school students to do some 3D printing. As you can imagine, when we look at students who have physical immobility, that some of their assistive technology, the mounts that they utilize, can be very, very expensive to purchase. So we actually have a 3D printer, and we're partnering with some of our high school students in the ETI building to print and make some of those mounts for our students to utilize on a daily basis.
Can I say something here too? So also on the 3D printer, I'm sorry, I'm very excited about this. I was talking to our teacher of blind and low vision, and for our students who are blind, they're using the 3D printer to print a map of the school. Because if you think about not being able to see, they're using their fingers and hands to follow what the building looks like as they maneuver before they go to the building and as they're first there, as a cool way for a map to be able to see the building. The 3D printer is amazing.
So this is definitely a planned transition, I promise. So if you would all grab the box that's in front of you. We had talked a long time about Heart City Coffee Company and our young adult students grinding and packaging coffee. Well, one of the things that we realized is that we needed to get into the K-Cup market. And so through some additional research, we had to be mindful in the abilities of our students when we were thinking about this. So gathering or buying a traditional K-Cup machine was not actually conducive to our students being able to continue to produce them. So we were able to find a different way to produce these K-Cups. And so you have a variety pack in front of you that has 6 of our Heart City coffee flavors. They're all labeled on the bottom. They are all individually measured, sealed, and labeled by our students. So I brought a couple cards that were made by some of our students as well in our young adult program. And just hats off to them and the wonderful work that they and their staff are doing. We are also now live on the website for online ordering. And we would be happy to accept any donations for those products.
That was shameless.
Would any of our sharks care to make an offer?
But
note to you guys, if you guys want to trade coffee at the end. Yeah, okay, but I like Jamaican drink. That's my favorite fruit.
You should try the blueberry. It's the
Blueberry
seasonal
is good,
flavor that.
so, yeah, I'll do blueberry, but, all right, we'll just take theirs.
So another one of our goals is on retention and recruitment for staff to keep our special education teacher of record in all positions. So this year we will be hosting our second annual Back to School University in August. This year we're going to be opening that up to the region so that teachers from all over the district, all over the area can come and participate in our Back to School University. Of course, you all are welcome to attend. I hear some of you attended last year. You all are welcome to attend the Back to School University again this year. And it's just a very special thing that Elkhart does that the area doesn't have. And so highlighting the cool things that we are doing in Elkhart to the teachers in the area, trying to show them why they want to join the team here at Elkhart. We also see Joe there in the picture with a nice big smile. We had a table at the recruitment fair trying to recruit people as they were going through. We're starting year 6 of our IUSB program, and there was a flyer. Tony said it was an RBT flyer in your packet, but it's really not an RBT flyer. It really is. It really is about our cohort program, getting teachers into the classroom through that program at IUSB and our staff that teach that. We're also intentionally providing mentors for our new staff, assigning them with a teacher or a professional in the like field. So if it's a special ed teacher, I remember my first year in Elkhart as a special ed teacher, my mentor was a gen ed teacher, and she really couldn't help me with anything special ed related because she was a gen ed teacher. So we're being intentional, making sure that our special ed teachers are mentored by special ed teachers, our SLPs are mentored by SLPs. So being very intentional on who is going to be the mentor for our new staff as they come on board. We also have a Canvas course that we are housing all required trainings for our special education staff. So it's a one-stop kind of place they can go and do all the training and that is required by the state and also by the district. And then finally, we were able to provide lunch on that e-learning day. So we had them all together. And so while we had them all together in one place, we wanted to go ahead and provide them lunch. And that was provided by the electric company, the AEP grant. So we were happy to be able to provide them lunch through our catering department. It was delicious.
Quick question, I'm sorry.
Yes.
With the IUSB program, how many students do we normally have in that cohort?
10. Yeah.
I used to before too. How many do we have right now currently?
I think we're at 4 out of 5 have stayed.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say
This
that's
current school year?
no,
Yeah.
overall.
Oh, overall.
Overall. This current school year was a smaller number than 10. We didn't have 10 complete.
How many?
We had 6 this school year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is year 6.
Yes.
Out of years, how many up to this point did we have?
So I believe in total there were 48 applicants over the previous 5 years. And we have only lost a handful of those candidates,
Okay.
It's a
teachers.
big deal.
Okay, cool. Great. Thank you.
So if you know anybody in the community who has a bachelor's degree in any area that is
I love that.
interested in joining the field of education, we would be happy to have them apply for that program that would allow them to receive or earn a free master's degree in special education in return for them working for the school district for a minimum of 5 years. And that is taught by even some of our in-house experts, the wonderful Lindsay Brander. She can't get away from us. All right. So a big part of what we are building up to is not only the little milestones and successes at preschool, elementary, middle school, but really ultimately making sure that our students with disabilities are transitioning into post-secondary with a solid plan for success. For some of our students, that means things very different than going to college. But our goal is to make sure that 100% of our students with disabilities leave Elkhart Community Schools with a plan for success, not just to go sit on their couch at home. Okay, so we have been very intentional this year specifically about smoothly transitioning students from each building to the next. So we spent some time developing a transition plan for PACE students moving to kindergarten. Very intentional about getting the staff together that work for that student, so that really when that student starts kindergarten in the fall, they're hitting the ground running. We're not spending time relearning that student, trying to problem solve things that we should already know and have in place. And then that has extended all the way up from our 6th graders moving to middle schools, then moving to the high school, and then even our students who have completed their 4 years of high school and still have IEP goals to work on are then transitioning into that young adult program. Part of that, on March 8th, it was a really busy day for us, but it was amazing. It was our first annual transition day. So Shirley mentioned that was the first time that all special education teacher of records have been in the same location since before COVID. And that is amazing because that gave them opportunities to have those conversations about students and really plan for what next year is going to look like. Tony mentioned in the RDA results that we get graded for special education for different areas. One of those areas is indicator 13, which is transition planning. What it requires is that for all students who are age 14 and above, so every year after 14, as a part of their individualized education plan, their IEP, that we intentionally plan for them transitioning out of high school or onto that next post-secondary career. So we're having intentional conversations with students about what their hopes and dreams are, where they want to be employed, what kind of things they want to do, what kind of education and training they need, how they can be involved in their community, if they need help getting a driver's license, or if they need alternative methods of transportation. We're having all of those conversations beginning at age 14. So as a part of that, we do get audited by the state, and they randomly pull 10 IEPs and they review those for compliance. I'm happy to say that at Elkhart, we don't believe in just compliance. We believe in really doing what's best for kids and going above and beyond in those plans. So they really are quality. Our staff have done an amazing job in leading those conversations and really getting students to the next level. So Tony mentioned Jessica is here, and so hopefully she can attest to this, but streamlining our transitions, a big part of that was middle school and high school student scheduling. So we put in a plan this year where we were very intentional about collecting the information about the classes and the services that students with disabilities need when they go on to that next level, and make sure that everybody who has and needs that information has it. Because inevitably we would have a 6th grader who was ready to go to Northside, and then in the fall they showed up at Pierre Moran, and we wouldn't know what they needed without doing a lot of research. So that was a big effort that we put together this year. And then we also are starting a new process where we're looking at current juniors, making sure that they're on track and working with our special educators and our counselors to be very intentional about them when they are a senior, making sure that they're getting all the pathway classes they need, the additional supports, or we're bringing in things to make sure that they have that post-secondary success plan in place. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
So, and the last goal is an area that we touched on when I started talking about the RDA. So our results-driven accountability scores came out, and in working with Dr. Shepard, we will continue this goal, but Dr. Shepard will actually join us when we're putting this goal together for the future, so that we can talk about how we're working together with general education and special education teachers. This became so important that this year you'll see the Do the Right Thing conference, the DOT conference that's put on, will be overlapping with the Back to School University So some of our teachers will actually be together during those times to work general education and special education together on some of the topics. And I know that team has continued to work very hard at putting together a solid plan. So I'm excited in August to see how that will kind of work out with us being able to talk about differentiating that instruction. And then, am I continuing?
Yes.
All right, I'm on a streak. Collaboration with instructional learning to plan differentiated instruction, what I just talked about. I do want to have Lindsay come up and just share a little bit about this, these accessible materials, this accessible educational material grant, and actually look at a video because we were highlighted by patents, and she can tell you a little bit about patents.
All right, so every time we come and present, I talk about accessible materials and how we're leading the state and all these things. You guys have these great questions. I figure the best way to explain it is actually to show you. So Patents is a statewide organization that is funded through the state, providing resources to public schools that really have expertise in terms of assistive technology and accessibility. Right. So I mentioned some of the unique devices that some of our students need, whether it be for communication or writing. Patents actually has a lending library where we can say, hey, we want to try this device with a student and see how it works before we go and spend the district's money on obtaining that for that student. So that's one way that they help us. And then ultimately, when it comes to our students participating in the general education classroom, we have to think about accessibility. So we have talked in the past about students may have a print disability. They can't necessarily decode the words on the text, but if you read it to them, they understand it, right? So that's not that they need necessarily specialized instruction in understanding the content, but they could be a 10th grade student and you give them an audio file and they are performing the same as their grade level peers. So that is one of the ways that the accessibility impacts some of our students. So we are currently a year 3 grant recipient. Done a lot of work over the last 3 years. And I'll piggyback on Tony's, we as a special education team could not do it alone. It has truly been a partnership with instructional leadership, working with Brian Bennett and the instructional technology team, Rhiannon Harrison, and the EL department as well, really looking at how can we make education accessible for all of our students here in Elkhart. So without further ado, yeah, I didn't say we were chosen as a success story by Patents, and so they produced this video, and it is actually being utilized by them to recruit future teams.
Community Schools has been a part of the Patents Aiming for Achievement grant for 3 years. Over this time, they have had weekly meetings with Patents staff to develop an action plan to bring accessibility to all classrooms. The Patents project provided their AIM team focused assistance through consultations and training at no cost. Let's see firsthand the academic impact of the Patents Aiming for Achievement grant throughout Elkhart Community Schools.
The main highlight here has been not just focusing on accessibility within our intense interventions, but also branching it out into the gen ed classrooms and making sure that the students in those classrooms that everything is accessible. A big part of my specific role here at Eastwood has been trying to expose students to different means of accessibility and stuff like that, so that if they have a classmate who is using accessible materials, they aren't shocked by it, right? They know that that some classmates learn differently than others, and these materials are just things that are helping them learn. Mrs. Buchkowski, the mild interventions teacher, we were seeing that Jay was just doing really, really well, but does have some of his fine motor limitations and everything like that. And Mrs. B, she was like, I want to give him an opportunity to participate in writing and be able to write, and how do we get him to write without actually physically writing. And so our OT, Katie Godfried, Mrs. B, myself, and then Mrs. Stemp as well, we all kind of came together. We were like, how can we get this? Does he push letter by letter? So we kind of threw some things out there, and then we threw out the Hail Mary of TD Snap, because you can manipulate the board really, you can edit things really easily, and we thought, let's see how he does with some sight words and see if we can get him to write using the communication device so that his fine motor isn't the limitation. So Mrs. B took that and she ran with it, and it's been really awesome. So that's where he's at. He's participating in writing, he's identifying sight words and all of that using a communication app, even though we're not really using it for communication, we're using it for writing.
Add numbers button to activate. Press space bar.
Do we do that?
Yep.
Space. Sound category. Sound set. Sound category combo box. Sample enter. Sample
So last
sound.
year we went to the Patents Expo, and we went to a session where they were sharing the code jumper, and then Julene was able to borrow it from the IERC, and from that we were able to use it and then work with Willow with it. So it's just nice that we were able to borrow it, since it's kind of a little bit more pricey and we would only be able to use it with a small number of students, so being able to borrow it has been really nice.
1, 2.
Wait, I want to do an experiment. Did you just hear that?
Yes, I heard it. Come on.
What is it supposed to be? Glass breaking? Or no, it's not. That's supposed to be 3.
Okay, and what's next?
We have been following the lessons on the code jumper. So Willow has been learning about the parameters, about variables, just about sequence. And one of the things that they did was each of the code has a sequence that she follows, and she was able to have something where when she wakes up, she has a sequence. And like, she gets up, she pets her cat, she tells her mom she loves her, and then she gets ready for school. So that was a sequence that she has when she wakes up, and she was able to put that and parallel it to the code and the sequence that she has for code. So it's just so cool how Code Jumper is not just, it's coding and she's learning coding, but it also is relevant to her life.
Oh, I did forget to change that. That sounded funny.
Does it become a new code every time you change something?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
It does.
You told me that you were excited about having Code Jumper because what?
It was going to be really fun, and I'd have new experiences, and I'd learn code better than my brother.
One of the coolest thing about Code Jumper is it gives her kind of that visual that she needs for coding. So a lot of what they have is block coding, and that she can't see the block. She can't manipulate the block coding on like something like Scratch. So having this Code Jumper gives her that ability to do block coding without having to see the block coding. And it's nice because with her classmates, they might be able to do block coding on Scratch, and then she can do the Code Jumper for here. And then later on, we're hoping to do something where both her and her classmates can then work on a coding program that's accessible, so that they have that background of the block, but then she'll actually be able to code instead of like without using the Code Jumper. So this is like a really great foundation for her to use that parallels what her classmates are doing.
Javante, I have had since he was in kindergarten. We've tried a lot of different systems for communication and a lot of working on his engagement to just get him engaging with people, because when he first came, it was that was a challenge. So we've tried things like a 7-level communicator, which is a mid-tech device, but he has a habit of throwing things, of knocking things off the table, and it was hard to get the cause and effect of when he would tap something, something else would happen, and it wasn't robust. It needed a lot of changes. So then through collaborating with Patents and David Jackson, he told us about these 3D printed symbols from using the core words from projectcore.com. And so now we have this interactive kind of 3D board that gives Javante a little bit easier access of being able to select and grab on to what he wants to say. You ready? We're gonna make it Go. Go.
My son is one of the students in our district. He was actually one of the original 23 students who were identified in Elkhart with a print disability. He has dyslexia, and he's serviced with an IEP for a specific learning disability. And in 4th grade is when we added the print disability to his IEP services. And he has been using these materials from the beginning. He was one of the very first kids with technology right at his desk, and it really makes a huge difference being able to access his general ed curriculum rather than having an adult sit next to him and read to him. He's able to have the independence that he needs to be successful. He's a senior this year and is planning on going to college, and so this has really been something that's helped him. I am really happy that we are working with the Patents Project have received the AIM grant, because it really has, this particular topic is like one of my passion, in case you can't tell, it's one of my passion points, and it became my passion because of my son, but I'm also a special ed teacher before I was the district dyslexia coordinator, and it became important for me to make sure I had that for my students, and I wanted to be able to reach more kids. And so through this process, we've really been able to increase the amount of students who have access to that general ed curriculum, which is so, so important.
For part of the grant, I use Snap and Read. It's been very helpful when we do novels, because even if we get like a translated copy, the page numbers are all different. And so if I'm like, students read 3 to 11 and they get the translated copy and it's all over the place and my Spanish isn't as good as I would like. And so I have no idea exactly where to tell them. And so now I can just hand them like the novel we're reading, like page 3, and they can snap it. And within seconds, they're able to translate it and then listen to it. And then even some of my students that are pretty proficient with English, but they're like, I just want to double check, they can just snap a page real quick and be like, oh yeah, I did understand that. Or like, oops, I was way off. And so it's been very, very helpful with that.
Good job. Check and see. Our third year with the AIM grant, and I've been on the team from the beginning, and mostly in my role as blind low vision teacher and with assistive technology. But I've participated in all of the weekly meetings with our coordinator, and we've made lots of changes. Some of the biggest changes have been with assistive tech and establishing processes and systems for better meeting the needs of our students. Slide your embossing head over. There you go. What do you want to do a line of? 1, 2, 3s? 1, 2, 3s? No press?
1.
Nope.
The more we can do these.
Okay. When Vivian started learning how to use the Braille writer, she was having a hard time with isolating her fingers on the individual keys. And so we 3D printed this key guard so that it would help guide her fingers into the position they needed to be in. And it's made all the difference. The key guard right now is helping guide where her fingers are, but the hope is that over time, as she grows older, that she'll be able to position them there naturally. It will develop a motor memory for her for using the correct fingers.
You want to try it again, Eddie, though? Good job. Let's just do that, and we'll go on over to Jermaine. Give him a chance. You got the number 2, Jermaine. Let's see if you can hit that. And take your hand off. Spin, buddy. Jermaine, can you spin? It's your turn. Good job. Okay, pull your hand back now. There you go. Good job. You got 2. I've been teaching since 1995, and I have older versions of this, but I was back in 95 teaching with one of these. I like that they're updated and what they can do, and what you can do with this is cook. When helping kids cook, instead of getting our kids around, it's very dangerous trying to turn on a switch up here or turn it on and possibly hands getting in the bowl. So using a switch, Eddie can go ahead and hold it and mix our cookies. Good job. Can I high five? Yeah. Good job.
Being able to reach out to Patents and go, this is what we have. Jessica Conrad walked us through a lot too. Like, this is what we have. This is where we want to be. How do we get there? What are some things that we for sure need as an assistive tech team? And so I think they helped fuel our passion and helped us actually give action to our passion. Otherwise, we were just sitting there going, we're so passionate, but had no specific processes or anything like that. So Patents has really helped us out in that way. And I think we are as successful as we are as an AT team because of the help that Patents has given us, for sure.
The Patents Project staff are available year-round to support Indiana schools in creating and sustaining an equitable learning environment for every student through universally designed access, engagement, and participation. Also, consider Elkhart Community Schools has been a part of the Patents.
All right. Sorry, we get quite passionate and we want to share with you, but that video lets us see some of the things we keep talking about and actually connect some dots, which is pretty amazing for some of our students who have really difficult times communicating verbally or being able to use devices. So I know that we have another presentation, so if we want, we can take questions now, or I can hang around after and we can get questions from that point, or maybe we were just so eloquent we're done with questions.
Nobody has any questions?
All right. We're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about high ability. I do want to say very quickly before Lisa and Gail get started, Dr. Virginia Burney is one of the board members for the Indiana Association of the Gifted, which is the body that looks after gifted children, does all of the big trainings in the state of Indiana. She contacted us to request us to write letters in support, and she is a professor at Ball State as well, for a national award for high ability for Lisa. So Lisa Ernsberger will be nominated as Coordinator of the Year nationally from the state of Indiana. So if we could give her a hand. Dr. Burney couldn't stop gushing just about how quick of a change things have been occurring for Elkhart and what she's hearing as she is leading that charge down in Indianapolis and in Muncie. So kudos to Lisa, and I will get out of her way so she can get started.
Thank you, Tony. The joke is that Tony's never made it to a March high ability meeting. The first time he was in an accident and the last time he had surgery. So I'm really hoping he makes it through the next 10 or 15 minutes. And it's a win. So
make sure I was highly medicated.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. That is definitely the work of the team of the high ability coordinators, the guiding coalitions that we've worked with, and all of the cluster teachers and building principals who've supported the things we've done moving forward. So I really appreciate the work of those team members to get to this level of recognition. I'm assuming I just nope. Look at me, Jacob. Like I totally this.
Yeah, you can use either one.
Okay.
Mouse or the clicker.
Mouse or the clicker. Okay. Okay.
It should buzz once. There you
go. Thank you. So 3 years ago when I came on, we started with the 3-year strategic plan for high ability. And it's amazing to say we're at the end of that 3rd year where we start to look at high school and high school programming and what we can do to enhance our high ability services at the high school level. So as we're finishing this up, our first charge when we met initially in May of COVID year, so virtually, was to create that vision and the core values that are going to drive and lead us forward. And so as you're looking at the vision that's up there in the core values, I want you to just keep in mind that this is what we're hoping you look through as the lens of what we're proposing as we're moving forward with some of the recommendations for the high school. I know there's some new faces here, so I wanted to just kind of review what is required of Indiana Code for high ability. So at Elkhart Community Schools, we identify high ability for those students who perform at or have the potential for performing at outstanding levels of accomplishment in math or English language arts, as we compare them to kids with similar age, experience, or environment. And so it is written into Indiana code, so it is Indiana law. It is not a federal law, meaning that there is not a ton of there are no federal dollars attached to it. So as we look at what we receive each year for a high ability grant, it's about $80,000 to $83,000. And so one of the things I've been doing is working and lobbying with Dr. Burney on increasing that funding at the state level. So I'm pleased to report it cleared the House to increase that funding to come up to a more appropriate cost of living increase. And so it has now gone to the Senate, again, continuing to lobby for that increase in funding for high ability here in Indiana. We start every new guiding coalition by looking at what is required by law for high ability. And so it is required by the state of Indiana that we identify high ability students in grades K to 12. And if they are identified, we have to serve them. And so we have to have a plan if parents opt out, that they know and they're aware that they are opting out of those high ability services. We also need to have an effective curriculum plan, which is basically a counseling and guidance plan, so that character education and well-being that's specific to high ability. We have to have a professional development plan. We have to meet annually, at least once a year, with our broad-based planning committee. Here at Elkhart, we meet 3 to 4 times a year, and that we need to work on increasing our underrepresentation of our population of high ability students. So as our high school guiding coalition got together, the areas that we looked at we needed to focus on were mostly related to the effective curriculum plan, the professional development plan for high school and school counselors, and then a way to track our high ability students at the high school level, that they're being served in the areas that they're identified. So our timeline with our guiding coalition, which was made up of 2 district administrators, 1 building principal at the high school level, 2 parents, and 10 teachers who all represented either dual credit, AP, ACP, or honors classes. We started back in September, and as I mentioned, we looked at what's required by law, and then also looked at those national programming standards to see what we needed to do to guide our work to head towards the national level of providing services. We also started to review what we currently offer at the high school, and we noticed that we offer a large variety of services for our students at the high school. So there weren't many changes made to the academic side. As I mentioned, we found that the guidance and counseling plan was where we needed to focus our efforts. So in October then, we started to look at the pros and cons of different types of ways we can support our high ability students. In December, we did that initial recommendation, which I'll talk about a little bit down the road here. And then January had the further recommendations of a few different areas of adding some training and including potentially a high ability coordinator at the high school level. February, this was taken to PRG, which is the local kind of group for feedback. And then in March, we held our focus groups with our high school parents and some of our high school teachers. So some of the big proposals that came out of our guiding coalition work were the idea of a 0-hour, moving to a Loud-A system of recognition, and then a lunchtime learning. The 0-hour and lunchtime learning were to address the guidance and counseling plan. And so as we look at this, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into all 3 of these moving forward. I do want to mention one of the things we talked about, again, was if we've identified a student as high ability at the high school, we have to track that they're being served. And so we've created a system beginning next year that will be able to see all the high ability kids at high school and ensure they're being served in English or language arts or both areas if they're a general intellect student. And if they're not, then working with the school counselors to figure out what their rationale is of why they're not taking honors classes, dual credit, or AP or ACP, and ensuring that the parents are aware that that is their option for being served as a high ability student at the high school. And so if parents opt out, they'd be able to furlough those services, but at least parents would have an idea that their children opted out of being served as a high ability student. So the first recommendation that the Guiding Coalition is going to ask for next year is that we offer a 0-hour. And so this would be before school starts, be the hour before school starts, and only at the 10-12 campus. We found that due to limited transportation, students at the 10-12 campus would be more likely to be able to transport themselves an hour before school started. We would publish a list of activities that would be offered on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings to students and include that on the parent newsletter, so parents are aware also of what opportunities their students have. Teachers would be able to sign up for a monthly commitment to those 0 hours and would be paid on claim. And we would rotate through a variety of topics that we will survey our high school students on. We'll also meet with a small group of high school students to see what would be most valuable to them and also get their support for recruiting their classmates to attend. So just off kind of the Guiding Coalition, we were going to look at study skills. So how do you study? Also providing that opportunity for them to study prior to final exams, giving them an opportunity to quiz each other, sit with each other, go through their notes, take a look at how to write for college essays, give them that time and space as well to write those essays. Our students that we identify for potential national merit, we would ask that they'd have that opportunity during this time to potentially be coached up so they would qualify for national merit as a junior. Some days would just be strictly focused on games, chess, socialization. A lot of the kids for high ability like to spend time together, and they don't always get that opportunity. And then also giving that greater access to academic competitions, so giving them a variety of things that they can participate in to move forward academically. The lunchtime learning then would be offered at both the freshman division and the main campus. It would be a quarterly offering where students would sign up in advance. It would occur over the lunchtime of 60 minutes, so 30 minutes is approximately what's given for lunch, and then they would be out of class once every 4 weeks, once every quarter for a workshop or seminar. And so the focus of those workshops or seminars would be related to the characteristics of high ability. So you can see some of them up there. The big ones we see at high school, anxiety, stress management, imposter syndrome, and then our hope is our second quarter annually will be bringing back a panel of graduates to talk to the students as near peers of what life after high school looks like, what classes they wish they would have taken, where they feel like we did a really good job and could support kids further and give kids an opportunity to ask those graduates questions. So the last thing we'd like to talk about, and you'll find in your board packet, is a summary of a proposed move to a Laude system of recognition. What I'd ask for tonight is just giving you the heads up that we would ask in our April meeting that this would go to a first read. And so tonight really is the opportunity to ask questions that you would have related to moving to this type of system of recognition. As we were talking with the Guiding Coalition, each time we would meet, then we would meet with Gail and Carrie Anderson at the high school to run things by them, gain their support, have them give the ability to ask questions, provide feedback, and then also as that move forward, move that up to instructional leadership to also provide input on what we were asking to do. So as we're looking at moving to a Laude system of recognition, that is basically a tiered system of recognition. So many school districts, neighboring school districts in the state of Indiana, across the country are moving more to this system of recognition. We do not want to exclude any students who are challenging themselves by taking the most rigorous classes and earning those top scores in their grade. This would increase moving from really recognizing the top 10%, which is roughly 1 to 2-ish%, to now recognizing approximately 15 to 20% of our top scholars. So this really is a way to reward the learning for students. It's a way to increase achievement motivation and not just performance and trying to figure out how they can play the system to move into the top 10. Sometimes we have students who will elect to take a freshman level PE class to get the A, and then a kid who takes physics gets the B, and it doesn't equate. And so they've been able to pretty much game the system to get into the top 10. As we're thinking about this becomes more attainable for students as well. If you look at the levels of criteria, some kids thinking about being in the top 10 of a large graduating class, that's unobtainable to them thinking about that. And so when we move to a tiered system of recognition, this becomes a lot more attainable for students to set goals, to work towards those rigorous classes and perform at high levels. It really also supports the idea of building a culture of success here at Elkhart Community Schools and building a culture of achievement. So we're working as the kids are competing against themselves to challenge themselves to move up to higher levels, that they're able to do that and support each other instead of working against each other. So Gail kind of ran the numbers. So as we're looking at this, and again, this is in the packet for you, what we would be looking at is recognizing weighted grades. So for those students who are taking those advanced level classes, they could graduate summa cum laude with the highest honors. And if we were to do this, run this with our graduating class of 2023, which we're not proposing to do, we would have approximately 17 students, so the top 3% of the class. So again, as we're looking at recognizing that highest level of academic rigor and those kids who've really challenged themselves, we do have roughly, a little more than 10 students. The next level then we would look at Magna. So again, kids who performed 4.0 to 4.2. We have about 45 students, and then Kuma would be again 49 students. So I hope I spoke quickly and briefly, and as Tony would say, eloquently. So what questions can I take back to our guiding coalitions?
So this is just for the kids who are high ability?
No, it would be any kid who is involved in a dual credit honors class, AP classes, any of the weighted classes. We don't give a weight to our CTE dual credit classes,
Okay.
so it would just be the academic core classes.
Okay, so when I look at the weighted schedule, and I'm kind of asking this question because I was doing some research on this online,
Mm-hmm.
and what I noticed was there were schools that go to a point system with this program, and my question with that was, when I was reading about it, was if you've got someone who's taken a couple of the dual credit, AP, whatever, and they score have a 3.7, but they have all this other stuff. And then you've got somebody else who's taken a lot of other higher ability classes, and yet they have a 3.7 or a 3.8. So the person who's taken more only gets Kuma, but they've taken much more a number of more classes than a person who maybe have a 3.7 and maybe took a couple. So how do you distinguish that?
Okay.
And do you know what I'm trying to convey?
Yeah, so I know there are some schools that do go to that point system of, yes.
To kind of.
Yeah, and that was one of the things our guiding coalition did explore initially. And it's something I can take back to them prior to the April and see if we have a meeting in April to see what their feedback would be on that. I don't know, Gail, if you have any thoughts on that as far as. Gail is my resident high school expert here tonight, so with scheduling and classes and weights.
And I would just say that we're trying to include everybody. Everybody would have the opportunity. You can't obviously get above a 4.0 unless you take dual credit classes.
Right.
Or AP or honors. So I think it evens out in the end. When I ran the numbers and looked at the students, a student who took fewer weighted classes did not end up in as high a category as the students that challenged themselves, even if they didn't get all A's, because that weighted grade counted higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I might beg to disagree with that comment. Because if you have if you have a student that doesn't take any dual credit and gets straight A's, they're going to have a 4.0. And so that's the question you're asking is how do we recognize the kids that have a 3.7 because they took dual credit in AP compared to that kid that just took basic classes and got straight A's?
Exactly.
That's your question.
Yeah, that's my question. And that's why I think with the point system that some of the schools were incorporating that I looked at, they were using a point system as a differentiator for situations like that.
And I will still say, inclusive wise, I would like some of our students who are not identified high ability to still be able to qualify for recognition for the work they've done. We do push our students who are academic into those honors and dual credit classes as much as possible. So we have very few students at a 4.0 that have 0 weighted classes. They're going to take them because I put them there. To be honest.
I know we've had that conversation before, and making sure that we're putting kids in the classes that they really need to benefit them for what their plan is for after high school to help make sure they're prepared, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, I would like all students to be recognized that work hard, but I don't think we're giving fair representation or honor to the kids that have really pushed themselves and taken many rigorous courses, because we only honored top 10 versus giving a much larger group of people the opportunity to be recognized for those academic achievements.
No, I totally see that point.
Approximately, do you know how many high ability students have been identified at high school?
Yes, so at each grade level at the high school, we're roughly like 100 to 120. It really depends on the class. So, yeah.
And those are the only ones, when you mentioned the 0 hour and the lunch hour, those are the only ones that will be able to participate?
Yes, as far as what we have to do for Indiana Code is provide that effective counseling and curriculum plan, and so that would be a way to meet that need for what's required by Indiana law.
But don't we have roughly 300 or so students that go on to post-secondary college? So we have 2/3 of the students who would probably gain by study skills, that would gain on how to write a college essay, that aren't afforded this opportunity.
Yeah, and that is a question our guiding coalition did discuss, is if we open it up to all students and how they would sign up and how they would kind of clear that through either school counselors or building administration, if it was that they were attending for a sole purpose or if it was just attending to miss class. So the 0 hour one is specifically, we were talking about high ability just because if we're looking at those numbers and it's going to be at the ETI, we don't anticipate all 300 students coming. But it definitely could be something to consider as far as what we're doing there and how we spread that wealth to all the students. That is a great question. I know we discussed it, but I will take that one back as well.
Yeah, I just think the greater need would be for those students who weren't in high ability, that really need help with those skill sets. I think it'd be more impactful there.
On that same point, Mr. Scott, when you talk
Can
about
you
the
come up
0
to the
hour being.
microphone, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, but on that same point, when one of the things about the 0 hour was academic competitions. So we're saying that only high ability kids were going to do academic competitions.
No.
Well, I mean, but that's what the 0 hour stuff is. And so if that's what part of what 0 hour is, and we say that's only high, I mean, so it's, yeah, I'm same with you, because I have kids in my class that are not high ability. They're early college, but they're not high ability, and they are on the chess team. So if chess team meets at 0 hour, he can't participate because he's not high ability? Because that's what you just said to him, was that 0 hour was just for high ability kids.
It is, but that's not the only opportunity for chess club. It's an opportunity for them to play chess, for them to do practice,
But that's
but it's
probably
not.
but if most of them are going to be there, that's when the teacher is going to hold practice, because that's going to be the easiest place for it to be.
So I think one of my concerns is too, that it's kind of been brought up. So we have the early college program that focuses on a specific group of kids, and getting them prepared and giving them the supports that they need to be successful, learn how to be successful in a more rigorous environment, taking college classes to get them ready for college. And now we've got this piece that is really focused on the high ability. So what do we have for the kids who are in between the early college program and the high ability program? What services and supports do they need to help make sure that they are prepared and are building the skills and the tools to prepare them to be able to make it in a college environment, if that's what they choose to do?
So Gail, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but kids self-select classes, so any kid can sign up for dual credit AP, ACP classes.
That's not what I'm asking.
Okay,
I'm asking what supports and what are we doing to help those kids study skills, organizational skills, making sure that they have the tools and the supports they need to help them be successful. And if they're struggling in a high school rigorous environment, that they have the supports they need to be successful. So when they go to college, because right now we're focusing on two groups of people, and we're missing a key group that's in the middle of those two groups of people. So what are we doing for them?
Which I think is a larger
group.
So I want to point out that the Guiding Coalition for High Ability was looking at the law and looking specifically at what to do for high ability students. You're asking questions that are outside that field that Lisa's not going to have the answer to right now. So I think what we'll probably have to do is somebody will have to come back and explain, here are some of the pieces that are really being done to prepare those students who are on that between that early track. I know that there's another group that I'm not as familiar with that Gail, I'm sure is, of students who are first-time college students, right? Nobody in their family has done that. And as I hear, Troy talking about, those are kids who could really use study. Of course they could. So what are we doing for those? So I do want to point out that this presentation really was geared to meet the law portions for just high ability students. So the questions you're asking are a little out of the scope of what Lisa's team was working with. Is that fair for me to say there?
Yeah, sure.
So she's not going to be able to answer those questions because that team didn't do that work. So I think the questions you're asking are important, and somebody else probably needs to answer them. I don't think she's going to have the answers for them today because it's not in her lane.
That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, and I think there's some great things here.
Yeah.
And I think your team would be very valuable coordinating with trying to find an answer for this gap student who's identified.
Because can't you fulfill your need that you have to by law by still including the other groups? I mean, you're saying that you have to fulfill this as part of what's required by law, but still it would be better to include everybody if we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's the conversation we had about lunchtime learning, is if we would open that up to any student. We do have to have a plan, so we would have that mapped out as far as what we're doing to meet the law. And that, again, is a conversation with Carrie. We would have to figure, and Geneva, as far as what that would look like. Again, I'm just focusing on viability end of things.
As a classroom teacher, it would be better that the zero, I know you'll be at the mic, but as a classroom teacher, the 0 hour would be much better for all of those general people. Because if you're asking kids, and I know it's only once a quarter, but you're still asking kids that are those bubble kids, those in-between kids, to be out of the classroom for a half an hour to be doing something else instead of in class. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a lot when it's only once a quarter, but it can be. And if they need the help, 0 hour would be a much better place to bring in more kids than at lunch, from a classroom teacher perspective.
Is there any more questions about item? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we will take a 5 to 7 minute break and then come back for the board meeting.
Sorry. She's in the hallway. Conversations in the hallway.
If everybody would rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Elkhart promise is that every student is known by name, challenged and supported by highly effective staff, and in partnership with the community will graduate career, college ready, and life ready.
Thank you. Welcome to tonight's school board meeting. If you would like to have an opportunity to speak, you can fill out the invitation to speak protocol in the back of the sheet at the doors. Fill it out, give it to her. You'll have 3 minutes at the end of today's board meeting to speak. I would just encourage everybody to pay attention to the timer that will be behind me. Stay within your 3 minutes. And if you have any specific personnel issues or any specific instances that we ask that you don't say names to protect the privacy of staff members and or our students. And if there's any specific situation you want to talk about, see an administrator to have a private conversation. Since these are live streams, we want to be mindful of privacy of our students. You will also have opportunity to ask questions or make comments after each agenda item. So first are our consent items. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Second. Oh, sorry. Is there any discussion?
Yep, we have a donation of $750 from HRP Construction in support of our Elkhart robotics. And then we have a donation of $500 from SAL Communal Company, Kathy Carlson, for our Elkhart robotics. We also received $250 as a patron sponsor from Braden and Catherine McCormick for the theater department for supplies, costumes, and set constructions. And then we had a $25,000 to the ETI building from Patrick Industries. We also have some fantastic fundraisers that are going to benefit some great partnerships inside of our school system, including our United Track and many others.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next we have the feasibility study update.
So the feasibility study continues its work with the key committee. The past 2 work sessions have concentrated on looking at the number of capacity within school buildings, school enrollment, doing kind of a deep dive on that, and coming up with potential changes to the way our grades are configured in particular buildings, exploring some different options on that, and having conversations about what that could look like. In the week after spring break, on the Monday and Wednesday, the committee will get back together and be having some more of those conversations about building capacities in specific buildings, and potentially looking at buildings that if we would need to repurpose or we would need to close a particular building, what some of the ramifications of that might be. And again, people are encouraged, as President Davis always does, to encourage people to look at the feasibility study on the website and see their summaries of the meetings and materials that have been shared. Didn't mean to drop that from you.
Is there any other comments or questions about the feasibility study? All right. Is there any comments or questions from the audience? Our instructional report is up next. Dr. Schiff.
Good evening. We are happy to be here this evening, and I'm very happy to share the podium with our middle school principals. During the course of the semester, we have put together a middle school task force made up of the middle school principals, middle school teachers, and some district administrators to talk about some of the big scheduling issues that are facing us in middle school. We met with the notion and the idea that given our current status with staffing and all that, we need to get as close together as possible when it comes to scheduling across the schools. And so we've been working hard at doing that. And in our work, we came across this quote that fits pretty closely to what our thinking and paradigm was as we were working on this, which reads, "A master schedule defines the school schedule and courses, its associated terms, periods, and days, and is made in such a manner that it suits teachers, parents, and the students. Therefore, proper care must be taken to try and fulfill all needs. However," and this is the part that really resonated with us, "however, the priority is always the students." So our paradigm is what really is in the best interest of the students. And in so doing, we met trying to make some very difficult decisions about what scheduling ought to look like for the 23-24 school year in light of our staffing realities. With that in mind, our three principals will each share with you what the schedule is going to look like at their specific school this coming fall. So alphabetically, we're starting with North Side, and we have our interim principal, Mr. Greg Search.
Sarah Jacoby.
I can't remember anything. That was a test to see if you all were listening.
I'm glad to represent North
Hi,
Side.
Mr. Greg Search. Sarah Jacobiak, I'm sorry, Sarah.
You shrunk a little bit.
It's just that Frank used to work at North Side. That's my excuse.
Good evening. One of the biggest things for us here at Northside is staffing issues as well as student numbers and being able to do our best to get live teachers in front of our students rather than having to use the Elevate virtual classes. And so we did decide to, in conjunction with our task force and also meeting with the Northside Guiding Coalition, to move forward with a 2-semester 6-period day. We currently this year are working on a 7-period 2-semester calendar. So so next year we will have one less class period in a student's daily schedule. Dropping that 7th period, it allows us an additional 10 minutes of instructional time in all classes per day, which throughout the course of a semester will equate to about 900 additional minutes of instruction. This schedule also provides all students the opportunity to take more elective classes during middle school. We did look at a 5-period day, and we felt that for our students and the number of students that we have in our performing music classes, and also wanting to meet the requirements of the board and the state, we needed to be able to offer 6 periods. So performing music students could still take band, orchestra, or choir all year, as well as being able to get their PE1 credit in 8th grade and take college and careers, which I know are the 2 big courses that we really need to get our 8th graders through in terms of being ready to go on to 8th grade. Also, traditionally, I shouldn't say traditionally, probably the past 6 or 7 years, Northside has been the only middle school that has 4 lunch periods. That has always been due to our enrollment and being able to serve students in a timely manner within that 30-minute lunch period that they have. When we had a larger enrollment and we had 3 lunch periods, it was very difficult. We struggled to give students 5, sometimes 7 minutes to actually eat their lunch. So when we went to a 4-period day, that alleviated those issues, or a 4-period lunch, excuse me. Our enrollment has dropped enough, unfortunately at this point, that we could go back to 3 periods of lunch. And in doing that, that will give us a building-wide 30-minute advisory intervention period, which we've had an advisory period, but we had a 7th grade time for it and an 8th grade time. And it did cause some conflicts when we wanted to try and provide interventions, academic interventions for students, because of teachers teaching both 7th and 8th grade. When are they available? What students can they work with? So being able to have everybody in that advisory period at the same time will really be advantageous for students and for teachers, and being able to plan an effective intervention period. This is a sample 7th grade schedule. They will have the 4 core classes all year: language arts, math, social studies, and science. I will make a side note that we are in desperate need of a science teacher. I currently have 3. If I can have 4, if I can hire somebody, that will really, really help. And that will allow us to ensure offering science all year. And then students will have 2 periods in each semester where they will have an elective, and those are just PE and art, discovering college and careers, possibly language arts skills, PE elective. We are also looking at making health either a mixed grade course where it has some 7th and some 8th in it, and students take it at any point during their 2 years with us, which would allow us a little bit more flexibility. And again, the asterisk there at the bottom, the performing music students would replace 1 elective each semester with their band, orchestra, or choir class. This is an 8th grade sample schedule, very, very similar. Again, I just denoted the PE1 there is for high school credit, so we really want to be able to get kids through that class and have them pass that class to end their middle school career, at least going in with 1 high school credit. Why not a trimester at Northside? Because this is something that our task force looked at. Due to our enrollment and our staffing, going to a 5-period day on a trimester pushed our class sizes as high as 35 in some classes. And I'm not sure anybody agrees that that is an effective instructional model. That is just not good for any student, I don't believe, and I really don't believe it's good for middle school kids. Also, a 5-period day for us would prevent our performing music students from taking any additional electives, such as that PE1, art, health. A 6-period trimester created 18 class slots throughout the year for each student over the course of the year versus their current 12 that they now have in a semester style. We don't have enough elective classes or enough staff to teach all of those 18 class slots. So when I did sample schedules for our 7th grade, 7th graders ended up, in whatever trimester with an opening because I didn't have the class or staff to create a class in that format. So that's a lot of the specifics of why a 6-period semester is going to work best for us and our current staffing, our students' enrollment, that kind of thing. Okay. And yeah.
Good question. Are you currently in a 2-semester 7-period? So I guess I'm a little lost. If you go from a 7 to 6, how does that open it up for students to take more electives?
It opens it up versus like a 5-period day is where that change comes in, like that difference comes in.
But not just from a 7-period. 7-period would allow.
Correct. But we can fill those spots. And, yeah.
Any other questions before
And here's the real Frank Surge representing.
Thanks. Good evening. On behalf of Pure Moran, we feel the trimester would benefit us the most, taking in consideration staff shortages right now. Currently, we're 2 science teachers short. You know, we have 1 in each grade. That really it hurts us. So the trimester schedule, what it does, and I'll get into it when we start looking at the slides, but this schedule will guarantee a teacher in front of every student, and I think that's important. We got rid of our Elevate classes this year. It certainly settled the building down. We run a 5-period day currently. The building runs very well on that schedule, but we're unique because our enrollment's not as high as Pure Moran, or not as high as Northside or Westside. But our enrollment is very stable. We're looking at a pretty similar enrollment for next year. So I believe we can make the schedule work next year. The schedule is probably the most it's a lot more complex than a 2-semester system. 2-semester system is a lot easier to schedule. It's a lot easier to plan. So my thinking is, let's plan for the trimester. All right. Then if we can find 2 science teachers, then I would like to move to the 6-period day 2-semester as well, because that would bring down our class sizes. The trimester does elevate our class sizes some. It brings us up to probably about 31 at the highest, and a lot of the electives are a lot lower than that. But our teachers seem to be doing a really good job at managing those class sizes, and our kids are, I believe they're really coming along. This past year, we had, for example, we had 65 of our kids on the high honor roll, the principal's high honor roll, which is high for Pure Moran. So we're getting there. We got a little work to do yet, and I'll share our slides with you. All right, here's an example of student schedule on a 5-period day. Math would be year-long. If we can make it work, I'd like social studies to be 2 out of the 3. Language arts would be year-long. And what this would do, this would gain us 4,500 minutes of instructional time per year. So we would have 50% more instructional time by running this schedule with our kids. Science, since that's our area that we're really short in, they would receive science for 1 trimester, and it could be in 1, 2, or 3. And then our electives are listed down below. And we do have a pretty good assortment of electives. The periods would be 70-minute with a 20-minute advisory period in the afternoon. Here's another sample schedule as we look at it, and this is over 3 trimesters. And these courses could be in any order, and I'll attempt to explain it. Math is year-long, language arts is year-long. So you see science period 3 is the first trimester here. We fill in with electives, physical education, and general music in trimester 3. Period 4 is social studies, and right now we're filling in with we have social studies and then college and careers in trimester 3. 5th period, we have music, which would be your choral, your band, your orchestra, would be in that elective period. Okay, and these are the kids, if anybody's hurt, these kids are hurt by it, because the only electives they'll get is when we have to fill in for the science. So they'll still get 2 electives, totally honest with everybody. And then period 5 would be an elective for people that are not in band, choir, or orchestra, and they could be in art, music, health, college and careers, whatever electives we have available for. Here's some of the thinking we have on the trimester. More instructional time in math and language arts. And we're hoping that this will make a difference in our test scores. Because what I like to do, and we're not using it as effectively as I want at this point, but we will, is because I believe our period, 70 minutes, is long enough that we can build in interventions within that period. We can teach, we can reinforce, and we can reteach in that same period. And I think we've got to change our mindsets, and we're going to have some instructional coaching going on to make that happen. So the intervention during the class time, less periods, students have fewer subjects to focus on during the day. Students don't seem to be as stressed on this because they only have to concentrate on 5 subjects, 4 in an elective. So they're handling it pretty well. Provides all students with a teacher, which I think is probably the best point of all. We have fewer passing periods, and we have a 50% gain in instructional time. If we can find staff, I would move to a 6-period day with a 30-minute advisory attached to the second period, and our periods would be approximately 60 minutes. And that's all I have. Thank you for listening.
I have a question.
Sure.
So what happens if you're on the trimester and somebody transfers from like north side to your school, but they're on the semester? How does that work?
We can still match them up in the courses. The courses are still the same.
Okay.
They may be at a little different place than we are, because with that additional instructional time, we may be able to slow things up a little bit to really work on some of the deficiencies that students have.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
I'll see if I can get this one right. This is Carrie Leader. She's the principal at Westside.
Good evening. Before we get started, in attendance with me tonight are also my assistant principals, Mindy King and Helen Stegman. I just would like to kind of give a quick introduction of them as well to compliment them on all the hard work they've also assisted in throughout the years we've been rebuilding. Mindy and Helen in the back. So as we move forward, our change came definitely in a time of need. So the 2022-23 school year has been a significant year of rebuilding for Westside Middle School. So in addition to a new administrative team, we've also had to rebuild a number of areas in our certified teaching positions. And so I would like to just provide that overview because I'm optimistic that we're going to continue to find teachers and place them in those situations and vacancies that we need to be creative and problem solving and creating the schedule to meet our students and their needs. Since the beginning of September, we were so significantly short-staffed that we even began building a whole new special education team. We have 5 special ed teachers. That includes 1 teacher that transferred to us from another building within the district to take on the position and responsibility as department chair for our special ed team. We were in need of an in-school supervision supervisor for ISS. We were in need of a nurse. We were in need of an 8th grade social studies teacher, 8th grade science. All of those positions were filled, which allowed us to create consistency for our 8th grade students and our 8th grade teams in all the core content areas. And then a paraprofessional for our media center, and we're optimistic that our next wave of hires will focus on the 7th grade because that's where our core areas are still open. Language arts, social studies, science. I'm worried we're going to have some retirements that are nearing around the corner. So just continuing to be a voice and look for candidates that would fit our needs at Westside Middle School and moving forward. Our need to change to the 6-period schedule happened during the first semester. We were having difficulty finding, we were reaching out to the high school, reaching out to district level personnel to help us provide coverage. 7 periods throughout the day was proving to be quite an obstacle, while also trying to cover 3 lunches for supervision. And so it was really at that point where us as a task force, middle school principals, began problem solving, discussing, looking at how we could look to minimize the amount of coverage that was needed while we were still in search of teachers and long-term subs. So if we move to this next slide.
The arrow on the keyboard.
On the keyboard.
Or the mouse.
You can click the mouse or you can.
I just took us out of the slideshow. And now I turn. Thank you. So as we made those changes, the daily schedule went from 48-minute instructional block to a 56-minute instructional block, giving us a little bit more instructional time added to each class period. Our advisory was originally initially at the beginning of our day, and teachers expressed concern that it wasn't a productive place in the day in the schedule. So just kind of in working with Frank and Pierre Moran, looking at where their advisory was placed, we built upon that. So our advisory now is attached to period 4, which helps us with our lunches. So our schedule now starts 8:15 breakfast. And really, other than some hiccups along the way, the schedule has really met the needs of our building and our staff. We only have teachers, we have 3 teachers that are currently on an overload. So it's minimized the number of teachers that we're providing, giving up their prep to cover another section of a course that needed a teacher. And we have been able to eliminate Elevate, which again, much like Mr. Surge had mentioned, this gives students the opportunity to have a teacher, another staff member within those classrooms, curriculum that's connected and bridging together with other teachers within the building, keeping that consistency, cohesiveness. And just also, we're in a place though where we want to be mindful. We did lose 6 minutes between that last moment of dismissal at lunch and then into 5th hour, where our music classes from 6th grade come into the building from 12:30 to 1:30, that we're still trying to be mindful of, to work with our music teachers and staff to make sure those students are still getting their full instructional time needed for 6th grade beginner band orchestra. So if you look to the side, that's just the generic model or template. Every student, their semesters are pretty simple and straightforward. Language arts, math, social studies, science. Again, we too are in need of science teachers. I think with our 8th grade, we may have a retirement this fall. So that would leave us in need of another 8th grade science teacher. Our electives vary, but we're pretty well situated with our electives. We've had to be creative in staff that are able to teach not only a core content class, but also can teach electives. And so we have a teacher right now that is our art teacher, but she's also doing a fantastic job in covering and providing an elective for coding for our 8th grade students. So this next slide, and this is where I will wrap up, this is where the visual is very important for us. So Westside, we have the privilege of being part of the program to build our high ability cohort for the district for grades 7 and 8. And so currently right now on our 6-period schedule, 2 semesters, our high ability students, if you look at that first example, that gives you an idea, this is a current 8th grade student, of what their schedule looks like. Geometry, social studies, biology 1, those classes that are credit for high school, language arts, orchestra, and then their PE credit. And then if we look at the flexibility it gives, they get 2 electives. They're not forced to choose music over a PE course or Our concern is if we can't get them into that PE, how does that affect them as they transition to the high school? Our honor students, again, that flexibility. And then the last example gives you a visual of a current student who is a gen ed student. And our one area of concern, if we move to trimesters, and if we do move, or we're challenged to move to a 5-period day, it takes away that choice. But it also impacts our teachers. Our teachers right now that we have are really wearing 3 hats. So for example, I have a 7th grade teacher who she's science. She teaches the high ability for 7th grade science. She's the honors teacher for 7th grade science. And then she also teaches her sections of gen ed. It makes the schedule very tight for us when we have a teacher that's wearing 3 hats like that. And that's why when we look at 6-period 2 semesters, this has met the needs of Westside, our scheduling needs. And I know Dr. Thalheimer and Dr. Shepard can kind of chime in on this at any point in time, where we've started back in September to the staffing needs that we have right now. It's amazing at the hard work our teachers, our staff, the support of the district has given to be in a situation where we come into the building, we only need 1 person to help cover 1 or 2 classes. Our teachers have been given their prep time back, which is more than valuable to keep our teachers afloat with where they're at, instead of asking them to constantly be subbing and picking up those extra overloads for instruction.
Thank you.
Finally, as we move through the rest of this school year and we get towards summertime, we will continue to monitor the staffing situation as well as student enrollments. And if things are to change a little bit, where, like Frank said, if we are able to get a couple more teachers, we all could move towards being all on semesters with 6 periods. We're giving ourselves a cutoff date to make that switch of June 1st, because our counselors and our middle school administrators will be going on vacation at the end of June. So if we cut it off and say we can switch at June 1, then that gives them the month to go in and make all of those changes in all of those student schedules that they would have to. So as you heard from them, our whole focus was on what is going to serve students best. Can we get a real teacher in front of our students? Can we give them as much instructional time in those core areas as possible? And can we relieve our teachers so that they are not too taxed where they can't provide the best instruction possible? So thank you all very much.
Is there any questions or comments from the audience before Dr. Shepard sits down?
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry.
Cartoon. So good evening, everyone. My name is Rhiannon Harrison. I'm the Director of English Learners. And I was asked to share a little bit about how we are doing on SIOP. So SIOP, let's see, I can go ahead and advance. Yeah, I'm going to give a brief overview of what it is, because I know we have some new board members since I presented last. So basically SIOP, it stands for Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, and it's for Tier 1 instruction. It is a research-based, validated instructional model that's proven effective in addressing academic needs of English learners throughout the United States. And you may know this, that here in our district, we are 6th in the state for the number of English learners in Indiana, just coming behind Indianapolis and Fort Wayne. So we have over 2,000 English learners. So this is a very effective model that we are using to help meet the needs of the students that are before us today. So within SIOP, there are 8 parts called components. And those are listed there. Lesson preparation, building background, comprehensible input, strategies, interactions, practice and application, lesson delivery, and review and assessment. And so this year, we have decided to focus on lesson preparation, just the first one. And actually, we started SIOP in 2018. So this is our 4th year to be in this process. But as we all know, when we went online, it was not the most ideal as far as education, even for our teachers. And so we completed all 8 online. We developed a course. But now we're really diving in and focusing back on each of those, just to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our teachers and our students. So this year, this is our district's goal, is that 80% of teachers will be implementing SIOP Component 1, which is lesson preparation, at a basic or higher level within one subject or course daily. So I believe you also have in front of you the rubric. So we developed this rubric to help us know how our teachers are doing and if they are on track. And so that's, as I go through the slides, that can be a reference to you as we just talk through each of the different parts. So what does this mean? So within SIOP Component 1, there are 6 parts. And what we asked administrators to do was just to give us a baseline of how we are doing on each of those 6 parts. So content objectives are what students will know. Basically, it's like the standards that we're teaching that are written in student-friendly language. Language objectives are kind of new to us. So language objectives help to tell kids how the language will be used in the classroom. So that when they walk in the door, they see on the board, oh, okay, today what it says is I can label the atomic mass and share with a partner. So that's how they are going to use language today. Number 3 is content concepts are appropriate for age and background level of students. So here we get a lot of students from Central America. So we've been getting students from like Venezuela, Nicaragua, and sometimes their background is not at the level as other students. And so we need to make sure that the content that we're teaching is appropriate for them at their age and background level. Number 4 is supplementary materials. That is all of the graphs, the models, the visuals that we do. 5, adaptation of content for levels 1.0 to 4.9. So in English learner language, there are 5 levels. Level 5 is fluent, and level 1 is like a beginner. So making sure that when you teach, your content is helpful to all of the students in your class. And then number 6, meaningful activities provide opportunities to practice the 4 language domains. And we've really been hitting this hard this year, emphasizing especially speaking and writing, which is 2 of our lowest district-wide. So those are the 6 components. Now I'm going to dive into each one and show you percentages for each one. So content objectives, like I said, are the standards written in student-friendly language, clearly displayed, defined, reviewed, and assessed. So as you can see from the rubric, we have 31% of our teachers who are doing just that, getting a score of 3. We have 40% that are getting a score of 2. So they're doing all except the assessment part. We have 20% that are getting a score of 1 and 8.6% are getting a score of 0 on content objectives. And this, as you can see, so our goal is to get a 2 or a 3. So 71% of our teachers are getting a 2 or a 3 at this time.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How can anybody be getting a 0?
How can anybody be getting
Yeah, like
0?
why would somebody be getting a 0?
So they are not posting. So what this is displaying, defining, reviewing, and assessing your objective for today. So it could be they didn't post their objectives on the board or in their Canvas course, like they aren't to that point yet. Maybe they're a new teacher. Maybe they, maybe this is a substitute. It's so 8.6% of our staff, which is about 40 teachers.
Is it a specific follow-up for the people who are getting reviewed or additional support?
This is a baseline. So we are starting with this. So yes, there will be follow-up and additional like instruction, and I'll share this information with principals so that they can see district-wide, this is where we're at. And yeah, I'm sure that that would be reflected in their evaluations as well.
Is this just a daily snapshot, or
What do you mean?
like when you went in and there was no clearly defined content objectives for students? Was it just that day? Was it over what period of time?
So it wasn't actually me that went into the classrooms. I asked the principals to do it. So it was based on their observation. So I don't know specifically if it was for one day. My guess it was for the time that they have been working with them, that they are not seeing the objectives.
So if the principals are doing it individually at the schools, is there a consistent way that things that they're looking for to evaluate everybody on the same standard? Or is everybody just using their objective?
So when I asked principals to do this, I offered to go in and do a walkthrough with them. So I went with several of our principals and we talked about it, because sometimes it can be an I can statement. Sometimes it starts, students will be able to. Sometimes it can be like embedded in a SMECAN's chart, like other PD that we have done. So I helped principals see that this is doesn't have to be like a certain formula. There are lots of ways that teachers can tell you what is the objective for today. And so they were aware that it's not just one specific, you have to do it this way. In the language objectives, like I said, this is the one really that helps our English learners. So our English learners are trying to learn language and content at the same time. So when teachers can say specifically what the language objective is for the day, that gives them like a roadmap, basically. And they're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do today. So this is the one that is the lowest of all 6. So we have 23.5% got a 3, 34.7% are scoring a 2, 19.6% a 1, and 22.2% a 0. So this is definitely an area of growth for us. And we are doing PD on how to write language objectives. And I'm working with schools individually, as well as administrators on how to do this and help improve. The next one, content concepts are appropriate for age and educational background level. This is our highest. So we have 65.7% are scoring in the 3, 22.9 in the 2, 6%, 6.7% in the 1, and 4.7 in 0. So overall, 89% of our teachers are doing well with content concepts. Next is supplementary materials. So as I listed there, graphs, models, hands-on manipulatives. Overall, you can see 71% of our staff are using supplementary materials. So this one is also one of our highest, 27, 43, 22, and 5 in the 0. Adaptation of content. So this is what I was alluding to before when we have students in our classes who are all different proficiency levels from level 1.0 to 4.9, being able to adapt the text to be able to meet their needs. So 65% of our staff are in either the 3 or the 2 range. Again, another area of growth for us. And then the last one, the sixth one, is meaningful activities. So teachers using letter writing, interviews, simulations, activities that incorporate at least 3 of the 4 domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So basically, we want teachers to do more than just stand and talk. We want kids to be interacting. And as you can see, 75% of our staff are doing that, are scoring at a 3 or a 2. So on average, and looking at all 6 of these, we are at 72%. Our goal is 80%. So we'll continue to provide PD and help our teachers and just work at meeting the needs of our English learners.
I have another.
Yes.
How often is this reported out to the principals, and what is the expectation for them to do with this information?
So this, I just compiled this information for this report. So I will be sharing it soon with the principals so that they can have knowledge of like how we're doing district-wide. The expectation would be that they talk to their staff and encourage them so that when we do another snapshot of how we're doing, that we will be able to show growth. So we don't have a deadline set because it's already here the end of March, but it will be an expectation that they share and they talk about this with their staff.
Here's what my concern would be in the beginning when the principals are going to evaluate in the classroom and there's not a standard way that everybody is evaluating, and then not also a specific protocol after. How accurate would this even be if it's just really subjective and there's not a standard way that everybody is looking and evaluating what's happening in the
Not sure of your question.
So if each principal is just given a general idea of what this could look like or what the options are, but there's not a list of these are the 10 ways or 20 ways that they could show some of these standards, if everybody is just using their own judgment and it's not a standard way everybody is evaluating, I'm not sure how accurate this is as far as how we're doing with SIOP, if there's no structured process.
So every principal has been through the SIOP course. So we have 22 modules that explain each of these components. So they have been through the course, and they have, in that course, we have interactive, videos, we have examples, and I have gone to the administrative meetings and talked to them about what it looks like. So, for example, we don't want teachers to be so cookie cutter that when you go in, it's like you have to have it posted and it doesn't mean anything to them. We want them to be able to incorporate it and have it be live, so that it's part of the instruction. So if we would just say it has to look this certain way, I'm afraid that it would lose meaning and that teachers would just post it just for compliance. So we want it to be, we don't want it to be so stagnant. We want it to be something that's incorporated into instruction. And I believe that principals have knowledge of these are, I was talking to my daughter about, the presentation I was doing tonight, and she's like, well, what does that mean? What is SIOP? And I was like, well, it's like when a teacher, instead of, coming in and there's nothing on the board, it would be having the objective for the day and what you're going to do for the day. And she was like, oh man, I wish all my teachers did that, and she's not an English learner. So these are just good quality instructional models that help all students, not just your English learners. So our principals know, and I believe that they can identify these things.
I think part of that, I will speak to you, the struggle is protocol is in the name SIHOP. So it doesn't seem like much of a protocol.
So are you saying you don't feel like there's a check and balance? It's just kind of free flowing and it's kind of whatever you want to do is what you do, and you're thinking that maybe as part of an evaluation from the principals of those implementing the SIOP, there should be more of an expectation of how they're presenting it, but you're saying you want it to free flow in the education so that we're taking our English learners and letting them feel comfortable with what they're doing and it kind of just flows naturally into the education, but yet you think there should be like an evaluation aspect of it. Am I hitting that right between both of you? Like I'm trying to balance both of you out. And they don't have to use I can't statements. They don't have to.
There's a variety of ways
yeah,
of
so
making
good.
the statement.
I'm saying it feels like, you're saying it shouldn't be super structured, and that's not what I'm saying. This
Okay.
feels way too unstructured, so I feel
Mhm.
like it's something more in the middle
Mhm.
that gives it, I don't know if credibility is the right word, but I feel like it's either here or here, it should be somewhere.
And perhaps so again, like we survived COVID and we did the online course. So this is really year one of diving in. And perhaps as we continue to grow with this, that we can become more streamlined and more structured. But at this point, we are getting it out there and we are asking teachers to begin including these things. And I think that it will become routine and it will become part of like culture. And then it won't be, then if we bring in a structure and we say, this is the way it needs to be, then it won't be so unusual. Yeah.
So right now, is this, hold on, Dr. Shepherd, is this a suggestion or is it a requirement?
Is a requirement, yes.
So these are kind of like qualitative practices that are being looked at where you're going and you're trying to see some common themes that might develop, and that takes time to identify what those are. So when you're laying the base, it feels a little mushy at the beginning, but as time goes on and we do more of these snapshots, then patterns start to appear that, oh, people who are doing language objectives are doing these types of things, and you can build it from that way rather than doing it from a more deductive model where it would be, okay, here's a list of things and just check off everything on that list. So it's kind of growing qualitatively speaking. And as time goes on, we will be able to identify these are the key things that we know really work in classrooms, and it could be a host of things that will develop as we see these practices being implemented more and more.
I would just add, the other thing we discussed Monday at the instructional leadership team meeting was that as we have this data, so we have the data with the data snapshot of the district, and then of course the principal had the data that they submitted. And so the question back is, given where we are as a district and where your building is, what are the next steps? And so part of the issue would be is that if a principal felt like their numbers were overrepresented or underrepresented in the conversations that Rhiannon has with them, then is that a question of needing to have a better idea of how to use the rubric? Like, do they not feel comfortable using that? Do they not know what it looks like? Those kind of things. Because the rubric is really the guide. And the language in there is fairly clear to be able to say, when I go into classroom, I see this. And if I don't see these things, then I have to give a lower number. And if I don't see it at all, then it's a 0. So our question back to the principals, as we discussed, was if we've got 0, like what's happening with the people that have 0s and what professional development do they need? What do you need as a principal to help support that person who has the 0s? Because in some instances, those principals have learned about PSYOP and done it kind of right alongside the teachers.
Right.
And so that's where we're needing to make sure that we're providing the support there to raise those levels of what those scores are. So the rubric is a way to try to bring that objectivity to it. But again, as with anything, it's subjective, but these are also our building professionals who do the evaluations using a rubric.
Right.
So that's where, if it's an issue of not understanding the PSYOP rubric or needing support in supporting teachers who are at the lower scores, that's the next step that we have.
Yep.
So if you've had some of these preliminary conversations about, I mean, for example, about those who got 0, what is some of the feedback you've gotten as far as why people have had a 0, what kind of support they need?
I have not specifically asked. Again, I just received this data and compiled it. So if I were in that position, I would look like, yeah, more strategically at Like, is it a gym class? Do I need to bring in a place where there can be, where we can post the content and language objectives? And just, I guess, look at it more strategically as to why there is a 0. I don't know who those are. I mean, I could go back and look at the data, but dive in a little bit deeper, I guess.
So, Dr. Shepherd, I have a question. How long have you been working on this program, like implementing?
Since 2018.
Since 2018, we started with the first trainings and the building of the Canvas course that people started going through.
Okay.
And then since 2018, you know, we've had quite a few new staff, and so they have to catch up or get started even in the model. So we're always every year in a new learning mode for some staff as well.
So you talked about some things. So since 2018, what themes have you seen come out of any of the data or the recording you've done since you've implemented?
Well, I think since the training, you can better answer that, but what we have asked is to start with the implementation, which you said at the beginning of your slideshow, with, you know, let's start with those content and language objectives. Let's start there. I mean, something simple, something that's really tangible, something that can be seen. And I think that we are seeing that with the content objectives, and we're seeing, well, we're going to need more work on helping people. Maybe it's even helping them understand what is a language objective. You know, just to say that your language objectives are not posted, maybe we need some more professional development for folks on trying to understand, you know, what does a language objective look like when I'm writing a lesson plan, when I'm putting it into practice.
I think you had a good point. I think that with new teacher turnover, bringing new people into it, introducing it, I think it's going to skew this data. I think it's, again, what we're struggling at. When you go back and actually do a deep dive into the data, and you have to do this, but it kind of makes sense to my brain, that if we kind of break it down from like 0 to 1 years of working with this, where they score out, you know, 2 to 3, 3 to 5. I'm assuming, as you stated, as it goes on, people adopt, figure out what works, what doesn't work. I think the scores are going to look vastly different for people who've been engaged with it for the entire 5 years. And so that's where I think seeing this report, I think
that's what I'm saying.
That's what she was saying is it's skewed a little bit, because when we see 0 initially, you're like, well, how can nobody have clearly defined content objectives in their class? Or one possible answer is a brand new teacher, and it's just been introduced to this, but we don't know that.
Right.
And that's one of the things with the data. The data really should drive us to some deep discussions right along those lines.
Correct.
Just a follow-up question on that. This all feeds like to WIDA scores?
Yes.
So there's levels 1 to 5.
So when will we have the WIDA scores for this year?
It's usually in April, like so there's like usually a hold, but we can see them around, the end of April, I would say. And then it isn't until like middle of May to the end of May that they're finalized. So.
Any other questions from the board?
Can I just
question?
I'm just gonna, sorry, I'm just gonna speak as a classroom teacher who's been here a while.
Yeah.
And I was on the committee when we first even talked about having PSYOP, so it's been around a while. But this is the first year for me as a teacher where part of my evaluation, I've been doing this, I do this stuff normally. But this is the first year it's make sure you're posting all of this stuff. Make sure you're actually, you know, showing, I'm doing it, but now as a teacher, I also have to like make sure that it's visible in my classroom. And so some of those scores that are 0s are people that we do it, maybe we're just not posting it. So it's not like we're not doing it, like, or this one, it says I can get a 3 if I'm doing 3 out of the 4 domains. Well, during the snapshot, if I'm only doing 2, I'm not getting that. Does that, I mean, so.
That's why I asked, is it a
Yeah.
snapshot of 1 day, is it over time?
So for, and when somebody said something about evaluation, it is, part of our evaluation on our professionalism part is whether or not we are following district initiatives. This is a district initiative. So if, as a classroom teacher, I'm scoring a 0 every single time, that's going to absolutely be reflected on my evaluation, because I'm not following the district initiative. I'm not doing what it is I'm being asked to do. I mean, you talk about principals going right along with us. This is what we're doing in some of our PLC work. Our PLC work is working on SIOP. It's making sure that we are doing ICANN statements, that we're talking about it together so that we know what it is. And for some of us that have been doing this forever, sometimes it's just telling me, oh, that's what you're doing, Linda, just write it this way. Okay? And so some of us, even those of us that are veterans, need a little bit of help sometimes with this stuff. So.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments from the audience?
Okay, Doug.
Thank you.
Dawn, are you ready?
I am ready. And we'll slowly wander up here. Good evening. This evening, the administration is seeking board approval to revisions to Board Policy 3421.01A, which is this professional staff contracts and compensation plan. And we are seeking approval for revisions to 3 administrative positions and requesting a waiver of second reading as it relates to those proposed revisions.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Motion.
Well, you got to have a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor? Oh, wait, is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now the motion.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's all we.
That's all you get from me tonight. I know it's disappointing. I'll see what I can do to really get a whole lot more policy because I know how much you love it all.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Our district qualifies for a common school fund loan in the amount of $1,086,877. And so the business office seeks board approval to use these funds to make technology purchases not available from other sources of revenue. So specifically this year, we're going to upgrade 3 business labs, a journalism lab, get some MyWay kits for the special needs kids, and upgrade some projectors and classroom technologies.
Is there a motion? Motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Good evening. Business Department reports tonight that the February 28, 2023 cash balance ended at $39,339,127.36. As a side note, we've had some discussions about how to ensure that we protect our money with the crazy things that you've seen in the banking industry. I've had discussions with our financial advisors. I do have a plan that we will launch this week that falls within our board policies, and so I feel good about that. Moving on to education operations funds, cash balances are tracking well, and the expenses are tracking as budgeted. Also in your materials this month or this meeting, annually we write off and take money back for checks that are 2 years old or older. Interestingly enough, this time period was during 2020 when COVID happened, and so there was a larger number than normal. There was $8 refunds for students that had scheduled their SATs and paid the fee, and the SATs were canceled in April of 2020. So a little unusual, but this is a normal activity that we do once a year. The first page in there is from the corporate accounts. The second and third pages are all the extracurricular checks that were over the 2 years. So that concludes my comments on the financials. Are there any questions about that? Okay. And then moving on to insurance. As you can see, the first 2 months of the year, we continue to track well. We're very similar to last year's pattern, which was a very good year and resulted in a virtually flat renewal. So insurance is tracking well at this point. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions or comments from the body?
Thank you.
Do or do we have? Gail?
Hi, my name's Gail. I work as bus driver, and I'm go ahead and start. In the last 9 months, there have been so many changes in transportation. We now have 3 supervisors instead of 2. The change of commands keep changing, the rules keep changing. Michelle, over dispatch, stop finder, neither one will be used during spring break or the summer. Actually, anytime school is not in session. The purpose of dispatch is to answer phones, unlock doors for drivers, cover routes that call off, and bring out the keyboard for drivers. Dispatch is only needed when school is in session. Handbooks say we are to call in an hour before route starts. No one in dispatch here before 5 a.m. Routers are the ones answering phones and opening, bringing everything out, keyboards, and everything for dispatch. Routers are the first ones out for sub-routes. Michelle needs something to do to justify being here. Tony G and HR have reevaluated jobs and systematically are taking jobs away from drivers and supervisors. I also see so much bullying, intimidation going on, and I feel Tony is behind it. Why? At the board meeting on February 14th, Tony and I had words. He had said in front of several people, if I don't like it, I can leave. I filed a grievance on him, and it seems nothing has been done because Tony walks around transportation like he's untouchable. HR told me there's enough evidence and there is no bullying policy in place at Elkhart CH for staff employees. Did you hear about what happened in Middlebury schools last Friday, or this last Friday? Is that what's going to happen before something gets done about certain staff being bullied? Drivers are frustrated and office staff is divided. This is what they see. There's Team Tony and Team John. Michelle, if you listen to her on the radio, she calls the wrong drivers or bus numbers. Drivers and students say her tone on the radio sounds consenting. She's known to come in late and leave early. In between routes, dispatch doors are always closed. She leaves soon after the last call for a drop comes in. Tony throws John under the bus every chance he can. John has never been able to do the district director. Since Michelle came in, she questions every decision John makes, calls Tony, challenges John. Example, school closing. Tony gives Michelle what she wants. There have been 13 drivers who have quit in the last year, most because of the way Tony talks and treats them. Telling us if you don't like it, we can leave. If Michelle becomes the next director, you will lose even more drivers again. I strongly feel Tony is the reason transportation is divided. We don't need Team Tony or Team John. We need Team Transportation. Thank you.
I can't read the first name, but the last name is Banks. Is it Micaiah?
Yes, it's
Oh,
Micaiah.
I didn't want to mispronounce it.
I am Micaiah. I reside in Elkhart County. I work for transportation. I'm a bus helper. Okay, I want to bring to your attention the lack of training I have received in my process to become a driver. I have my CDL permit since March 1st, and I have only trained one 1-hour day, March 3rd, and haven't since. I'm always in the transportation building during our breaks. During our 3-day bus class from February 15th to 17th, and the time it took me to get my permit, general knowledge on February 24th, and endorsements on March 1st. Out of the 5 ladies I went with, only one had her permit and was in training, and then I got mine. To this day, 6 new people have came in and have been in training in groups while I've been waiting and when I've been available. Now it's been brought to my attention that I should train during summer break 3 days before break. No concern for any plans I have made and had, And if it's not something I can do, then it's possible my training could start the week after. My training has been pushed 3 times to the best of my knowledge. Why when I'm available? It's being preached that everyone learns differently, but it seems to me you must learn one way or no way. I am not the only one who has had this issue when it comes to training. I prepared to leave for another district to train, and I've been given it time, and I'm still prepared to leave if I have to. And that's all.
Thank you. Dr. John, did you have anything?
No, other than to just say that everyone have a safe and relaxing and well-deserved spring break.
Is there anything from the board?
Yeah, my apologies for being late. My wife had a knee replacement this morning, so she is up and about, and when I left her, she was going to bed, so she gets out tomorrow. Thanks.
Was it going to talk about the military ball?
Oh, the military, well, there's so many things that went on today. Yeah. Last Saturday evening, the military ball, I'm guessing there was probably 200 plus cadets in attendance along with their guests. They had a dance, a buffet meal, an awards banquet. It's kind of like senior night and stuff like that. And it was really impressive to see the number of, I guess you would call them minority students, women, Hispanics, blacks, the whole realm right there and stuff like that. And getting awards, and then also the kids that each one was encouraged to come to the mic and speak and about their experience with Major Dorman and Senior Master Sergeant Rutledge. And those kids adore those 2 guys phenomenally and stuff like that. That is a program that is helping those kids turn their lives around, and we need to put more resources to that particular endeavor, and a lot of resources. I know I personally supported. I know there was another business that came to support the military ball, as well as their trip out to where they go, Dayton, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and stuff like that. So that is a program that, and then also, this kind of gets off on stuff a little bit, but when you talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity, they don't teach that with those guys. They don't teach it at all. But guess what? Every one of those kids resembled that and reflected that in their actions, their manners, their attitude. And also, where else in Elkhart Community Schools do you teach a group of students how to shake a hand, how to look somebody in the eye? Where else do you teach them etiquette? How to eat, how to sit at the table? And where else do you teach them how to waltz? It's unbelievable what these guys are doing with these kids. And then also, because if you're teaching kids how to dance, it's kind of a couples thing, right? So there's never an equal number of girls and guys and stuff like that. So depending upon the occasion, you find girls dancing with girls and guys dancing with guys. And they're having a ball out there. Now, me personally, am I at that age? Oh, hell no, that ain't gonna happen. I'm kind of old school. But anyhow, I'll get off my little soapbox right there, but that is a program that we need to go after. And I think it's overlooked within our school corporation. Thank you.
Okay, and
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then also, the Career Center held their employability panel. There were so many business partners that were there with each one of the different groups that we had, and the kids were so well prepared. They were so, excited to do it. It was cute because they had their resumes, they were kind of nervous, and when you kind of let them let their guard down, they were like, all right, this is what I'm doing after school. And then it was very cute because all of them were like, can we come work at your salon? And I'm like, no, it's not that big. So no, you're not. No, but they I got to walk around because I got done a little bit early, and you would not believe how many business partners came to sit and work with all of our students at the Career Center. And it was well organized, well prepared. They did, we should, again, just another bragging moment on the Career Center of how proud I am of how well prepared all of our students were. And they were from all the different schools too. It was and they were so proud to be there and so excited as seniors, knowing that they had people behind them believing in them. So again, kudos to our Elkhart Area Career Center again.
Anything else from the board? In the